Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me on the Light Journal podcast. I'm Jamie Perez. Today, I'll be discussing the idea of service through alignment. This is the fourth episode of the 7 Levels of Service series. If you haven't listened to earlier episodes, I encourage you to do so. In the last episode, we talked about the process of introspection and awareness and how we learn to be both the observer and the observed, a vital practice that prepares us for the 4th level of service, aligning with our higher consciousness. This complements the Vedic teachings about the 4th innermost body, known as the intuitive or consciousness sheath. What exactly is the higher consciousness, and why do we want to align to it? That answer depends on who you ask, their culture, and the time frame involved. All can agree that it is a level of consciousness that goes above or beyond our normal daily experiences. This definition includes different states of consciousness achieved through different forms of meditation, or psychedelics like peyote, ayahuasca, soma, magic mushrooms, LSD, and others. Some might define it as a state of euphoria or bliss. Sometimes it's defined as lucid dreaming, shamanic journeying, trances, quantum space. It can be defined as out-of-body or astral travel, near-death experiences, or some other kind of mystical encounter. These are all intensely personal encounters and experiences that alter a person's perception of life and of this reality. Whether or not that experience meets someone else's definition of higher consciousness is irrelevant. If the experience has shifted your reality, creating a deeper understanding of who and what you are and how you serve, then that's all that matters. Those who haven't experienced what you did are unlikely to understand or believe. But you know, you experienced it. You are experiencing it. And that changes everything. Each of us have the ability to access higher levels of consciousness. It's part of our human design. We're not often aware of it because of everything that gets between our outer and inner self. As I discussed over the past few episodes, there are layers or sheaths or bodies, it doesn't really matter what term you want to use, between our physical consciousness and the pure awareness that dwells in the center of who we are. This is the 4th level of consciousness, and this is where we serve by experiencing it. We serve by developing or tuning into that connection. At this level of service, we can begin to see beyond our physical senses and reality, and that helps us to detach from our thoughts, ego, and sense of self. We become the observer and not just the observed. Instead of acting simply based on what's occurring around us, we act based on higher intuition and guidance. As I mentioned in an earlier podcast, that is how the idea of the 7 levels of service was born. So the question becomes, how can you develop your intuition? You may be familiar with something known as clairs. The clairs refer to the different ways we communicate or facilitate communications with our higher self or higher consciousness. Just like we have 5 or more physical senses, we have 5 or more spiritual senses. These are known as the clairs. A few examples include clairsentience, which refers to feelings. Clairvoyance refers to seeing. Claircognizance is for knowing. Clairaudience is for hearing, and so on. Our spiritual senses may or may not be physically evidenced. By that I mean we may actually see something with our physical eyes that nobody else sees. I experienced this for the first time when I was 12 years old and saw a ghost standing next to my sister. We can also hear with our physical ears. The first time that happened to me, the voice was so loud I jumped, but no one else around me heard it. We may also feel things with our physical body, things like chills, heat or cold, pressure, or touch, while no one else is feeling anything. But the clairs are more often experienced at a subtler level where we don't see with our eyes, hear with our ears, or sense with our physical body. Instead, we experience them through our intuitive sheath or intuitive body. I imagine you're probably curious about what this level of connection looks like in practical terms. Fortunately, there are many examples of practitioners using these different methods if you go to YouTube. Some examples include the concept of quantum space. You might enjoy learning that from Joe Dispenza. If you're more interested in communicating with unseen entities, you might enjoy learning from mediums and psychics like Matt Frazier, Suzanne Giesman, or the Seatbelt Psychic. If you're more intrigued by the idea of channeling unseen, higher vibrational entities, you may enjoy watching Esther Hicks. She channels an entity known as Abraham. Paul Selig channels the Upper Room, and Daryl Anka channels Bashar. But there are dozens of others that you could watch. If you're more interested in seeing how intuitives work, I'd suggest you start with watching Alicia Power or Sadhguru. Last on this very abbreviated list, you may enjoy learning about yourself through tarot or oracle cards. If that's the case, you may enjoy watching Isabeau Maxwell. She's the founder of the Sage Method. Keep in mind, this is by no means a complete list of methods for connecting with higher consciousness. I didn't even touch on journeying and trances through shamanic rituals or other meditative techniques. But if you would like to learn more, I highly recommend visiting the Next Level Soul podcast. Alex Ferrari does an excellent job of exploring the different methods for accessing higher consciousness by interviewing those who practice these different methods. I've listed that link and all the others that I mentioned beneath this episode on my YouTube channel. The thing of it is, higher consciousness is not just about communicating and interacting with the unseen realms. It also involves mental, emotional, and physical healing. The spiritual practitioners who have developed and really honed their spiritual senses can see and identify illnesses and injuries in other people just by opening up their intuitive senses, just by aligning to their higher self. Genuine shamans, genuine Reiki masters, and other true healers have been credited with identifying and healing all kinds of serious issues. History is filled with examples of miracle workers who learned how to access and align with their higher consciousness in order to heal others. Sometimes they do it through energy alone. Sometimes they incorporate natural medicines. Sometimes they use drumming or other healing rituals. The point is that they learned how to heal by aligning to their higher self. I have been very blessed in my life to serve as a conduit for healing physical injuries, as well as mental and emotional ones. None of this makes me special. We are all capable of doing this, but we've been taught, programmed, to think that we're helpless against physical, emotional, and mental issues. We're only helpless if we stay at that first level of consciousness, the physical body. It's when we move inward and integrate with each layer of consciousness that we begin to experience higher levels of awareness and abilities. We are all capable of being healers. We are all capable of communicating with the unseen realm. We're all capable of accessing higher knowledge and insights. The only thing stopping us is us. Serving through alignment with higher consciousness is not a one-and-done process. It requires ongoing daily practice. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a Bible camp one summer. Every day, I'd spend hours meditating by the water. Then one day, something inside me broke loose, and I could hear a higher consciousness. It was the bliss body, which we haven't yet discussed. In any case, I dwelt in bliss for 2 amazing weeks, during which time people all around me were commenting on my transformed appearance, some even telling me that I was glowing. Unfortunately, I didn't know what caused it, and so I didn't know how to maintain it. After returning home, where I didn't meditate like I did before, I lost it. And to this day, as of this recording, I have still not returned to that state of bliss, but I've never forgotten it. I guarantee once you've experienced it, it is impossible to forget. That experience taught me a really important lesson. Spiritual growth requires practice, focus, and intention. If we get lazy or lose our focus or intention, we don't stay still, spiritually speaking. We actually lose what we've gained. So if you've made it this far, to the 4th level of service, to the intuitive sheath, you have to keep moving forward. There is no staying still or taking it for granted. Accessing higher consciousness has no cultural, societal, or religious prerequisites. It only requires openness. Yes, there are belief systems that can help you understand yourself better and ease your progress to higher consciousness, but that isn't a requirement. You can find your way to higher consciousness on a remote island cut off from all civilization and belief systems. As long as you're open to it and have worked through the things that interfere with your reception, it'll happen for you. You'll connect to the higher consciousness. You'll align to your higher self. In the next episode, I'll explore what happens when we begin the 5th layer of service, reconciling with our past. Thanks for listening. I'm Jamie Perez with the Light Journal Podcast. Blessings on your journey.